Okay, hello. So this is a brief run through on the second round of uh, grant applications for FIRNS, the Facility for Investment Ready Nature in Scotland. My name's John Uttley, and I'm the Principal Advisor for NatureScot on nature finance. So we're really excited that round two has begun. We're now open for expressions of interest. And my purpose today is really just to take you through some of the basics of FIRNS and some of the changes between round one and round two, and then we'll answer a few questions at the end. So FIRNS is a collaborative initiative, NatureScot and delivering on behalf of Scottish Government, along with our partners in the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So it brings together NatureScot's remit to drive nature restoration and our expertise in natural capital and nature-based solutions, along with the Heritage Fund's expertise in community engagement and benefits for communities. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail today on what FIRNS is for and on the detail of what we expect projects to deliver. You can access all of that on the FIRNS web pages, which are at NatureScot, nature.scot. And they also hold recordings of webinars held for round one on various topics that are relevant, including introduction to investment readiness, community engagement and benefits, working with land managers, engaging with buyers, and baselining ecosystem services. So just quickly, I'm going to just touch on the purpose of FIRNS. If we can move to, I'm in charge of the slides, aren't I? About this. Yeah. So the purpose of FIRNS. So as I'm sure anybody who's watching this knows, there are so many good reasons to invest in our nature and our natural capital. In particular, there is no road to net zero without nature. We know that our economy is embedded in and dependent on nature. And we also know that nature can contribute so much more to our health and well-being than it does presently, because we are a very nature depleted country. So we need bold and innovative implementation of nature-based solutions. We need nature restoration at landscape scale and at pace, and we need to base all this on robust science. And FIRNS is intended to support the development of natural capital markets to bring new sources of finance into this area, in addition to the traditional sources of public and philanthropic funding. So first of all, we want to create a pipeline of investable projects in Scotland that's ready to meet demand from responsible buyers and investors in values-led, high-integrity, natural capital-based markets. And secondly, we want FIRNS to help in the development of the kind of market infrastructure needed for the success of natural capital markets. Things like codes and standards to drive up integrity and make sure that projects and the finance coming into them delivers on public benefits. So, as I said, it's primarily about building that pipeline of investable projects. At the same time, as part of that, we want to deliver on Scottish Government's interim principles for responsible private investment. A just transition is a very important driver in Scotland, and we need to make sure that the restoration of our nature and climate action delivers for all in a just and fair way. We obviously want to speed and scale up the deployment of nature-based solutions and make it easier to access finance for them. we want to grow natural capital markets beyond the existing scope of woodland and peatland carbon with the 2 codes that support that. We want to provide for a greater diversity of funding models for land managers. We want land managers and communities to be better informed and more able to engage with these new marketplaces. And we want communities more able to secure benefits. And we also want to increase the confidence of private sector buyers and investors who will be rather cautious about entering into such novel territory. We also need new market infrastructure that helps natural capital markets to work well, to standardize processes, to aggregate supply, so that it's at a scale where big investors can participate. We expect these projects and this new economy, if you like, to generate good quality jobs and the growth of diverse and robust supply chains in Scotland. And we also hope to gain from FIRNS a greater understanding of what further interventions might be required from government to unlock barriers to these markets. I just want to touch again, before I move on the interim principles for responsible investment in natural capital from Scottish Government. I can't stress too much how vital it is that all projects coming into FIRNS and being funded by it really do demonstrate the delivery of public, private, and community benefits. And if you're wondering about community benefits, there's an excellent webinar from round 1, and there's also lots of really great information on the Scottish Land Commission's website that illustrate what good practice looks like. So let's move on to round 2. I'll quickly touch on what has changed in round 2 and the timelines. First of all, the grant types and the size. So as in round 1, we're offering 2 different kinds of grant support. A smaller grant for what we call development phase projects. These are for project developers who are in the very earliest stages of getting ready for markets and investment. The maximum grant available is £100,000, so that's 50,000 from NatureScot and 50,000 from the lottery. And the larger grants, market and investment readiness projects, these are really for projects who are a little further down the line and can get further in the time available. We've reduced the grant size for these a little bit because there's less time than there was in round 1. All projects must end by March 2025. So the maximum grant there is 160,000, 2 times 80,000 from the 2 organisations. We are expecting this round to be highly competitive. So that's just a word of warning, but we don't want to discourage good applications. If you're an existing holder of a FIRNS development grant from round 1 and you intend to move on to market and investment readiness in round 2, then you should already know that you do not need to submit an expression of interest. But you will need to make an application, and the form will be available in December at the same time as it's available to all other potential applicants. And of course, just a reminder that applicants must apply to both NatureScot and the Heritage Fund. Having said that, all expressions of interest come only to NatureScot. So at the expression of interest stage, just NatureScot. At the application stage, NatureScot and the Heritage Fund. Another area where there's been some changes is under who can apply. Cut a long story short, there isn't so much money for round 2, and we need to maximize the value we get from it. And that means that we've decided to align NatureScot's eligibility criteria with lottery so that we can both fund all projects. Because in round one, there were a few projects which only NatureScot could fund, and we had to fund them in full because lottery could not fund them. So you'll see on this slide the range of eligibility, most of which hasn't changed. But because we've aligned eligibility with lottery, this means that private entities in general cannot be the lead applicants. The exception to this is if you are a private entity that owns heritage. That's the lottery's definition. In the context of FIRNS, that probably means you're a landowner. So if you're in that situation, if you're a landowner, private landowner, looking to be a lead applicant, then do speak to lottery to see how well your proposal fits with their criteria. If you are a private entity and you don't fall into that landowning category, we'd encourage you to try to form a partnership with an eligible lead partner. And if you can't do that, then do speak to NatureScot, because we'd be interested in any case in what your proposals are and whether there's prospects for supporting them in the future. So it's still worth having a conversation with us. Okay. So what can the grant pay for? This is really exactly the same as round one. Needless to say, all the costs in your application must be directly associated with developing the proposal, and they must have the potential, and the proposal must have the potential to deliver most of the fund's aims. Between NatureScot and lottery, we can fund up to 100% of eligible costs, and third sector organisations can apply for some cost recovery of up to 20% of their organisational overheads, like those related to day-to-day running costs, insurance, accommodation, etc., in addition to salaries. You can find information on specific costs that are eligible on the NatureScot FIRNS web pages. The only thing I'd add here is that one of the key purposes of FIRNS is to learn lessons and to share knowledge. So we will require all applicants to commit to participating in a community of practice, and the costs for that should be included in your application, and we would expect that to be perhaps around five days of time. So I think that's probably it on what the grant can pay for. Timelines. So we're open for expressions of interest now. Expressions of interest are strongly encouraged. It's quite a brief form to complete. And we'll give you feedback, which will hopefully improve applications that come out of this. So they're open now, and the deadline for submission is not very far away, the 3rd of November, which I think is probably next Friday. And that, as I said earlier, that comes solely to NatureScot. The form is on the NatureScot FIRNS web pages. We'll provide feedback within 20 working days or by 1st of December, and that's when the application form becomes available to download. And you must apply to both NatureScot using the form and to Heritage Fund through their portal. The closing date for applications is the 26th of January, and we expect to make decisions in late March, so that projects have 12 months to run until the 31st of March, and that is a hard stop. There will be no money at this point in the financial year 25-26, so all work has to be complete by the 31st of March. Okay, Q&A. So I believe we have some pre-prepared questions, which I'm happy to try and answer.
So the first question here is, what does strongly encouraged mean in practice regarding expressions of interest?
Okay, so you don't have to submit an expression of interest. So you can go straight to application phase. There are a few reasons for that, some of which are for our benefit, but the main one for you as an applicant is that, as I said, you will get feedback from both ourselves and from the Heritage Fund, which we hope will enable you to submit a better application with a greater chance of success. So it is in your interests, we think, to submit an expression of interest.
Thank you, John. The second question we often have is, what will the grant fund and what won't it fund?
Okay, I think I've probably covered this. There is detailed information on the FIRNS web pages, on the NatureScot website. So I'm not going to go into huge. I'm not going to read through the list here. So encourage you to go and look at the website and have a look. I think I've given you the key points already in this recording.
Very good. The third question is, in what way are local communities to have a say in the way projects are planned, and what would that look like in practice?
Okay, well, this is a really important question because I've already emphasized the importance of community engagement and to think about the ways in which communities can benefit. So we're here talking about local geographic communities that are either affected by or in some way the project, or if it's on their doorstep. So there's no right or wrong here. Well, there probably are a few wrong ways, but there are many different right ways of doing this. I would encourage anybody who's unsure about this element to first of all watch the webinar, which we recorded in the run up to round one last spring. That's again, it's on the FIRNS web pages. And secondly, have a look at and keep up to date with the Scottish Land Commission's website. They have a lot of really excellent guidance on community engagement and on community benefit, and they are, I think, proposing to publish some further guidance over the next few weeks. So do keep in touch with that. It's really important to engage communities as early as you can and as meaningfully as you can. So that means really not going in with preconceived ideas about what the community wants or needs, to listen to them, to find out what they need, and to try and to generate ways in which they can participate in the project, in the planning of the project and in the delivery of the project. And over its whole lifetime. In this way, you will first of all help Scotland to achieve its just transition, and secondly, you will end up with a more robust and resilient project if the local community feels a sense of ownership and really value it.
Brilliant, thank you, John. Another question is, I have a development phase project, and do I need to submit an EOI off the back of that?
Same answer as before. We will offer feedback on expressions of interest in development phase projects, just the same as we will for market and investment readiness. So yeah, the same. You'll accrue the same benefits if you submit an EOI.
Good. And the final question is, how can we sign up to the FIRNS mailing list?
Okay, so that's very easy. Send an email to ferns@nature.scot and ask to be put on the mailing list, and you'll receive updates when they're available.
Brilliant. Thank you, John.
Okay, right. Well, I hope this has been useful for anybody who's watching it, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future, either with an expression of interest or an application. And good luck. Thank you.